Hopefully this is the right place for this, because I have no idea what else to do. The police are useless. No one I've talked to takes me seriously. I know this story sounds impossible, but something happened to my brother and my friend, and I need to figure out what it was and how to get them back. I'm so scared something horrible has happened to them. The cops found this typed up on Steph's phone and asked me if I could explain it. I can't. It looks like she was trying to post it here but couldn't get enough of a signal for it to go through. I'm posting it now to see if anybody can actually help, because I can't make any sense of it. I haven't changed a thing. I even left the typos in case I missed something important. Steph didn't mention the name of the town, and I won't either because I don't think anyone should go looking for it. I certainly won't be going back anytime soon. Not unless I have to. Please, just read and help if you can. I'm sorry for any typos or if I leave stuff out. I'm trying to make this make sense, but I don't have long and it's getting hard to type. I hope somebody can tell me what's going on and how to stop it. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. I'm in this cabin in the mountains in Pennsylvania. I don't even know what this place is called. I just followed my friend's directions, so please just help me. I'm supposed to be dog sitting for my friend's brother, but stuff started going wrong pretty much immediately. My friend Amy, we're 26 now, but we've known each other since 6th grade. She knew that I was strapped for cash and she let me know her brother needed a dog sitter for the weekend. I'm not really a dog person. There was an incident when I was a kid. I still have the scar to prove it. It took me forever to mostly move past it. But I need the money. And I won't lie, I've always kind of had a crush on her brother, so I jumped at the chance to get his number and maybe an in with him. What she had failed to tell me is that her brother Jason lived in a creepy-ass cabin in the middle of the creepy-ass woods in the creepy-ass mountains. I knew it was rural, she had said as much before, but I figured he was at least near a town of some kind. Nope. Miles from anything that could remotely be called a town. I probably should have guessed when Amy sent me typed up directions instead of just giving me an address to plug into Google Maps. But I was too relieved about the job and I didn't ask any questions. I had been trundling along a dirt road for over an hour, maybe 2, wincing every time that I hit an unavoidable pothole in my crappy old car before it happened. It was dark as hell and I couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of me even with my high beams on. There were no streetlights, and the trees blocked every last scrap of moonlight. Anyway, I was creeping along, trying not to do any permanent damage to my car. I was munching on some French fries that I had picked up before I got off the highway. And thank God, since I doubted any pizza place would deliver out here, and I was too wiped to cook for myself. I had rolled a window down since my AC was on the fritz and the weather was weirdly hot for this time of year. I always thought of the woods as quiet, but the noise was ungodly. The crickets were almost shrieking, to the point where I couldn't hear half of what was being said on the podcast that I was listening to. It was honestly starting to creep me out, but I couldn't put the window up or I would boil to death in the car. And then I heard what sounded like a scream, a human scream, and I hit the brakes. I realized pretty quickly it couldn't be a person, not this far out in the wilderness and on what must be Jason's private property. I knew that some animals could make a sound like that. A fox, a mountain lion, whatever it was. I didn't want to be anywhere near it. I hit the gas again. Something streaked across the road in front of me and I slammed on the brakes and swerved, almost careening off the road in the process. I threw the car into park, my heart pounding, hacking up the French fry that I had been chewing. When I had finally coughed it up and caught my breath, I heard the barking. I looked out and there was a dog on the side of the road barking and growling, hackles raised. It had a collar on, so it was clearly someone's pet. Not anything wild. I was too scared to get out of the car in case the dog decided to lunge at me. and so I rolled the window up until it was only open a crack and whistled. It took a few tries, but eventually the dog turned to look at me. Almost instantly, its demeanor changed. Ears went back, a tail tucked between its legs. It crawled over to my car, jumping up and scratching at the window to be let in. And that's when I saw the tag. It had the dog's name, Barney, printed on it, along with the owner's phone number. This was Jason's dog. I looked into the trees, wondering what he had been barking at. Probably whatever I had heard screaming. I needed to get out of here with Barney. I unbuckled myself, reached back, and threw open the back door. Barney leapt in, panting and shaking, and I slammed the door shut. The dog whipped around to look at me, and I swear for a second he looked ready to attack. But he sniffed my hand and calmed down again, laying down on the back seat. I turned and took off again, hands shaking. I turned a corner and saw Jason's house. On top, I saw the silhouette of what appeared to be a large fallen tree limb with gnarled branches sticking out in every direction. But the house was in a large clearing with no trees nearby. It wasn't until I pulled up closer to the house that I realized what it was. A massive antennas and satellite dishes covering basically the whole top of the house, with cables stretched and twisted between them to form one haphazard mass, making the whole thing look like the floor of an untamed jungle. What could that be for? Was that how Jason had internet connection out here? Or was he losing his mind from the isolation and building his own techie version of the Sarah Winchester house at the instructions of the ghosts in his head? Can't say I'd blame him if he was, being out here by himself. All the lights were on and I could see his car parked around the side of the cabin. And right in front of me, I saw the front door open wide. Immediately, a million different horrifying scenarios ran through my mind. Did Jason have some kind of terrible accident, a heart attack, and run from the house for help? Did someone break in? Could that have been him screaming in the trees? I checked my phone, no bars out here. I knew Jason must have Wi-Fi because he worked remotely from up here, but it must not extend outside. I glanced at my mirror. Barney was quiet and still now, but his eyes were wide open, watching me intently. Sighing, I got out of the car, walked up to the porch. I glanced through the open door. Standing way back, everything looked okay from out here. I took one tentative step over the threshold. Still nothing out of place, no signs of a struggle. The furniture was all upright and where it should be. Jason's big screen TV and expensive-looking speakers were still there, and his car key sat on the dining table, so I doubted that it was burglars. I was still freaked out though. Next to the fireplace, a glass front cabinet contained a number of rifles. I thought that having one might make me feel safer, but I had no idea how to use one or even where Jason kept the ammo, so they were useless to me. And then my eyes moved to the fireplace, where two axes were mounted over the mantel. Perfect. I took one down and it was heavier than I had expected, but it would have to do. I went from room to room quietly as I could, but everything looked normal. Finally, I made my way to Jason's office. My heart was practically beating through my chest now. I turned the knob and pushed it open half an inch. I used both hands to hold the axe over my head, ready to strike. And then I kicked the door open and jumped back. The room was pitch black, perfectly dark. Somehow the light from the hallway didn't seem to seep in there at all. Somebody could be hiding out in there and I would have no way of knowing. I tried to think of what to do. "Hey," I said, "the cops are on their way, so you better not do anything stupid. Just stay back or you're in deep trouble." My voice sounded high-pitched and shaky, not intimidating like I had hoped. I inched forward and, against my better judgment, I reached inside the doorframe to search for a light switch, holding the axe awkwardly in my other hand. Any second, I expected something to reach out and grab me and yank me into the yawning black, but I didn't. I found the light, switched it on. The light, first of all, was weird, dense and orange-brown so that I could barely see even with it on. Inside the room, there was no one, but this place was weird as shit. I had expected a desk, a chair, a computer, normal office stuff. There were a bunch of computer monitors, maybe a dozen or more. They were on a series of folding tables that wrapped around the room. Under the tables, a bunch of processors were stacked horizontally on top of one another. Basically as many as could physically fit down there. And everything was connected with a tangle of cords and wires, some of which ran up the wall and into the ceiling. One long cord stretched out of this mess and connected to a cube sitting in the center of the room on the floor. Nothing appeared to be on, but I could hear a dull buzzing, so maybe it was all just asleep. Setting down the axe outside the door, I took a few steps inside. I assumed the cube thing controlled it all, and so I kneeled down to look at it. There were no buttons or anything obvious to press. Maybe it worked like a tack pad. I reached out for it and a pins and needles sensation started in my fingertips. I guess I should have stopped then, but well, I didn't. I touched it with the tips of my fingers. Everything awoke at once. A screeching sound shot out from behind the far wall of processors, nearly deafening me before I could clap my hands over my ears. The monitors, somehow they turned blacker, a darker dark that made my eyes ache, before rows and rows of green text scrolled rapidly down each of the screens. As far as I could tell, it looked just like random symbols, not any language that I recognized. I crept closer to get a better look and then all of it stopped. Silence crashed down over me and the screens went black. Cringing, I gave the cube a few tentative pokes, but nothing happened this time. Even the buzzing had quieted. My fingers still felt like they were vibrating though. What the hell? I rose to my feet with difficulty as my legs were wobbling beneath me. I shook my hand in a futile attempt to get rid of that vibrating feeling, and then I pulled out my phone. My signal was strong here, and so I tried to call Jason, but my calls wouldn't connect. I don't mean that it went straight to voicemail. I mean it made this horrible screeching sound that I guess means the number had been disconnected. For a moment, I thought the computers had turned back on, but no, it was only my phone. I tried texting him too, but those bounced right back. And so I called Amy.
Hey Steph, did you get there okay?
Well, yeah, but I think something's wrong. Jason's not here.
What do you mean?
I drove up here, Barney was out running loose and the cabin door was wide open, but no Jason inside. There was a long pause.
Are you sure?
Amy, I checked the whole place. He's gone. Nothing's out of place. I don't think he was hurt or anything, but he's not here.
What did you call him? I can't get through.
Okay.
I'll call the friends that he's supposed to meet up with. Maybe he's with them.
I think maybe you should call the police.
I don't.
She stopped suddenly. Amy? No response. I checked my phone. The call had been cut off. No signal. Great. I walked out of the office to check on Barney and the office door slammed shut behind me. I screamed and fell to the floor. I lay there for a long time, too scared to look behind me. Finally, I stood up and I tried the door, but it was firmly locked. I leaned my full weight into it, but it wouldn't budge. Oh, I should have left, I know that. But slowly, methodically, I convinced myself that everything had a logical explanation. Jason had left the house in a hurry because there had been an emergency. Whatever was messing up the signal on my phone must have messed up his too. That's why he hadn't called or texted. His car was here, but well, maybe he had a second one, or a motorcycle or something. or somebody picked him up. The office, well, that was weird. Maybe Jason was running some kind of experiment. That would explain the crap on the roof too. Or maybe I was right earlier and he was kind of losing it, being all alone up here. And the door, the wind must have blown it shut, but there had been no window in there. Oh, the AC must have switched on. Yeah, that's it. It blew the door shut and it jammed it somehow. I calmed down a little and went to call Amy back, but I had no service. Oh well, nothing that I could do about it now. Eventually, I explained away all of it. Part of me was still scared, but what was I going to do? Run away from here, run from nothing and no one. I went out to the car to collect Barney and my things, looking around me for any kind of threat. I had to drag the dog back to the house. He kept staring and growling at the tree line. Had the mountain lion or whatever followed us back. This whole thing was really unnerving, and I started second-guessing my decision to stay. But I didn't want to wind my way back down the mountain in the pitch dark with a pissed-off dog in tow. I would stay here until morning, and then I would leave if needed. Maybe by then Amy would have figured out that Jason is fine. Maybe the dog would be back to normal. Maybe this gig wouldn't be a total shit show. I shook my hand again. That pins and needles feeling just would not subside. And then I fed the dog, poured myself a large glass of the wine that I had brought, and I sat down to watch some TV and finish my fries. The cable up here was not much better than the cell service, it turned out. The signal was fuzzy and it kept cutting out. Finally, I gave up and I rummaged through the stacks of DVDs next to the couch. He had almost nothing that I liked. Almost all thrillers and horror. How he had managed to watch these things up here all by himself, I do not understand. But I found some sci-fi thing that didn't seem too scary, and so I popped it into the DVD player and I sat down to watch it. I fell asleep almost instantly. I woke to the sound of Barney growling. I sat bolt upright and saw him standing at the door, baring his teeth and ready to attack. Oh, buddy, not again. I stood up and looked out the window to nothing. Just trees and dark. Barney had quieted down again. I realized that I need to let the dog out before bed. I clipped on his collar and leash and I started to walk outside, but I grabbed the axe on my way out, and just in case. Nothing happened to us. Barney didn't so much as glance up at the trees, just did his business and went back inside. Whatever had been stalking us must have given up. I turned off the movie and I went to brush my teeth, feeling much more relaxed than I had just a few minutes ago. If it weren't for that vibrating, it had spread to the fingers on my other hand now, I would have felt completely at peace. When I came out of the bathroom, I noticed something on the floor that I hadn't seen before. It was a piece of paper like it was torn off from a paper bag, with a few words scrawled on it in messy handwriting. "Sorry, have to go." I stared at it, confused for a moment, and then suddenly overcame with rage. Sorry, have to go. Was Jason serious? He couldn't have at least closed the door behind him and sent me a text. I snatched the paper off the ground. It was clearly torn off and written in a rush. Maybe he had had an emergency and had had no time to think things through. But then why was his car still here? Who knew? Who cared? I crumpled up the note and hurled it at the trash can across the room. Right at that moment, Barney went ballistic. A stupid dog. I stormed out to the living room to see what the hell he was up to now. He was barking at the closet, the coat closet to the right of the fireplace. What the hell? I approached the dog, my sense of dread growing stronger by the second. I picked up the axe that I had set down earlier just in case. I reached for the door handle. Barney backed away, tail between his legs. I pulled the door open. Nothing. A totally normal closet. Some coats hanging up, a pair of muddy boots on the floor. The vibrating in my hands was getting worse though. But wait, back in that corner. What? The wall shouldn't extend that far, it just shouldn't. It would cut off the hallway on the other side. What is this? I stepped inside and was instantly hit with a wave of nausea so severe that it brought me to my knees. When I was bent down, I saw further back into the far corner past the coats. Black and deep dark, a soul-sucking black. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. A growl. I whipped around, fighting the urge to puke. Barney stood a few feet back from the door, poised to attack and snarling, hackles all the way up from neck to tail. "Whoa," I said, trying to sound calm. "It's okay, buddy." He lunged, coming straight at me. Without thinking, I reached forward and slammed the door shut. Silence. "Barney?" I reached for the handle. It wasn't there. I felt around for it, but it was nowhere. The door frame was gone too. No. I felt around frantically, hoping that I had just stepped to the side a little without noticing. I felt all along the wall, but nothing. I let out a terrified sob. And then, on the back of my neck, a breath. I screamed and fell and just kept falling. I awoke in perfect darkness. The ground was cold and hard, the air perfectly still. I sat up expecting pain, but I felt fine, except for those pins and needles. I looked around helplessly, eyes wide open but unseen in the vast black, and then I felt something hard digging into my hip. My phone. I still had my phone. I yanked it out and it was mercifully unbroken and still partially charged, but the image on the screen was messed up. It was like somebody had shattered it and shoved the pieces haphazardly back together. I had never seen it do that before. I had never seen any phone do that before. I touched the screen right in the center, and it started screaming. White noise shrieking at me like the phone was alive and in agony. On the screen, circles ripped frantically away from my thumb as though trying to escape. I dropped the phone and the noise stopped, and immediately I regretted it. Getting that phone to work might be my only way out. Or maybe I would find a way out and need to call for help. I knelt down and felt around the ground by my feet. After a minute, I started to panic that it had bounced away, but no, there it was. I tucked it back into my pocket. When I stood, my hand brushed something solid, and I jerked back, hitting a wall behind me. A wall. So this place wasn't endless. I reached out in front of me and took a few steps forward, and yes, another wall. To my right, a wall. I reached out to my left and took a few steps. Nothing. That way was open. Maybe there was a way out of here. A few more steps and my toe bumped something solid and heavy. I bent down, felt around with my hand, the axe. It had to come with me too. I gripped it tight and stood. I walked a bit further, shuffling because I was still blind. I would bump the left wall and then try to straighten out, and then shuffle for a bit longer and bump the right wall. It was clear before long that this was a tunnel. I don't know how long I continued like that in the dark. It felt endless, and it was getting colder all the time. I was constantly terrified that I would suddenly drop off a cliff, or run into something dangerous, or find the end of this place and realize that I was truly trapped. And then a light up ahead. More like a glow than a bright light, like the sun just started to peek up over the horizon. I quickened my pace, bashing into the walls a couple of times, colder and colder. As I got closer to the light, I realized it wasn't a single point. The light was coming from distinct points on either side of the tunnel. I was too far to say for sure, but I thought they looked like doorways. As I got closer, my suspicion was confirmed. Doorways staggered along both sides of the tunnel, harsh glowing light spilling from each of them. I approached the first one, shivering now. I looked through the doorway and felt the hope drain from me. It was static, like on a TV, white and glowy and fuzzy, a buzzing sound in the background. If I looked hard enough, I thought that I could see movement behind it, but that could have just been my imagination, or my eyes playing tricks on me after so long in the dark. The vibrating in my hands was stronger here. I made my way to the next one, more of the same. And then my phone began to vibrate in my pocket. I yanked it out, praying that someone was calling, someone who could help. But no, it was just more ripples, though this time it was happening without me touching the screen. The white noise was back, but quieter, matching the tone of the doorways. I put the phone back in my pocket. I took one tentative step toward the door, and then another. I reached a hand out toward it, but as my fingers inched forward, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I tried to push through it, but then the static did that rippling thing and it pushed back. It was like it was trying to repel me. Finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I yanked my arm back. I dropped to the ground and started to cry, and despair weighing me down. There was no way out. I sobbed and sobbed until I wore myself out, and then I just laid there, staring up at nothing. That dread feeling slowly faded. I stood up and looked further down the tunnel. There were doors as far as I could see, alternating on either side. They all appeared to frame the same static as the first one. There was nothing else that I could do. I kept walking. At first, I looked closely at each doorway, trying to see if I could glean any meaning from them. But after a while, I grew tired of it and gave up. I kept my gaze forward and trudged along for I don't know how long, until my legs had started to ache with the effort. But then, I noticed shapes in the static. At first, I thought that I was imagining it, that I had spent too long in the dark, and my mind was inventing things for me to see. But then the shapes were too defined to dismiss. I couldn't make out what they were doing, but there were definitely people moving around in there. I tried to call to them, but they didn't seem to notice. I walked closer to one of them, hoping this time that I might make it through, but the dread and the static pushed me back again. And then I could hear them, almost imperceptible at first, but growing just a bit louder at each doorway. And then I could see scenes playing out. A man and a woman screaming at each other, their faces inches apart. I ducked away instinctively, as though any second they might turn on me. A creature, a dog, lunging at the doorway. That one made me jump back in terror, fearing for a second that it might be able to pass through. It didn't though. It just disappeared and started over again a moment later. And the next one, a little girl sitting on the ground, hunched over herself and shaking. It took me a second to realize that she was crying, sobbing. I felt strangely connected to her, like I could feel what she was feeling. I didn't have to get close this time. The dread slammed into me and I cried out. "Hello?" I said to the girl. "Can you hear me?" She just kept crying. She had no idea that I was there. I collapsed, exhausted. How long had I been down here? Minutes, hours. I couldn't keep going, but I couldn't sleep when I felt like this. I used the last of my remaining energy to crawl a little further, so I was an equal distance from the last door and the next. The dread wasn't gone here, but it was bearable. In any case, it weighed me to the spot. I couldn't have moved if I wanted to. I shut my eyes. I shot up to my feet in an instant, a scream reverberating through my head. I had slept, no idea how long, but this wasn't a dream. It was real and it wasn't muffled like the doorway sounds. It stopped. I had no idea which direction it had come from. I stopped and listened closely, but there was nothing now. My heart was pounding, fear and adrenaline pumping through me, and I knew that I wasn't going back to sleep. I took up my journey again, faster now. The blurry scenes continued. The dread pressed in on me, forcing me to the middle of the tunnel. And as I walked and walked, glancing now and then at the doorways, I noticed something about the scenes. Maybe it was because they were becoming clearer, or because I had been in there among them for so long, but they were familiar. I hadn't wanted to admit it at the time. I couldn't think clearly anyway, but that little girl, I knew her. I was her, and I remembered that moment. I had just come home from school and my mom had sat me down stony-faced and told me that our cat had died. I had cried all night and the next day and for days after she died. And the two people arguing, I couldn't see them clearly, but I'm almost certain that they were my parents. They had had so many screaming matches just like that before we left. And the neighbor's dog slipping his leash and attacking me. I still had that scar on my right arm. And there I was again, sitting alone at a lunch table, trying desperately not to cry. Climbing a tree and then the ground rushing up at me. A group of girls surrounding me, laughing and pushing me down. I didn't know what this place was or how it knew or where it got my memories, but it was clear by now. It was playing back the worst moments of my life, and I was trapped in here with them. And I knew that it was only going to get worse. If I wanted to ever get out of here, I had to keep going through. I tried to keep my eyes down on the path in front of me, but it didn't help. I could still hear my cries, my screams. Lost as I was in my despair, it took me longer than it should have to notice. Footsteps, like the scream before. I knew they were real, they were not muffled like the doorways. They were clear and real and terrible, and they were coming from the direction that I had come from. I had to hurry. I didn't want to meet whatever lived down here. I started to jog. As I tried to put space between myself and the footsteps, the scenes grew clearer and more intense. My mom pulling me from my bed in the middle of the night and dragging me out to the car. No explanation, with nothing but the clothes that we had on. I never saw my child at home again. The footsteps are closer. I start to flat out run. Still, I could see the scenes playing out on either side of me. Another doorway, a hand lurching out from my neck. I screamed and tried not to look. And then ahead, a light. Not like the doorways, not a white glare. It was warm and soft and it was straight ahead. My muscles were screaming in pain at this point, but I sped up, listening to the footsteps get closer all the time. The static sound got louder and louder, occasional screams and cries piercing through it. I was almost there when I noticed a dark figure in the light, just standing there and staring. I stopped for a moment, unsure, but the footsteps were still hunting me. I thought that I could hear yelling from that way, not the muffled kind from the doorways, but a real living voice. There was no choice. I took off again, ready to meet my fate in the light. As I got closer, the figure began to take shape. A large man draped in shadow, the light behind him blinding me to his features. I locked eyes with him, or at least I imagined that I did. He shouted something and I raised the axe high and ran at him. I was almost there, steps away when he lunged forward, hands outstretched. I screamed and swung the axe. It struck with a sickening thud and the figure fell back into the light. He laid perfectly still, a dark pool forming around him. I stepped forward into the light and I screamed. The axe clunked to the ground beside me. I knelt down to confirm the horrible fact that I already knew. Before me lay Jason. The life already gone from his eyes. His skin was ice white. His neck was half severed from his shoulders. He was dead. I had murdered someone. The thought raced around my mind, but I could not make it real. The footsteps, they were still coming and they were almost here. Suddenly and violently, I vomited, but I couldn't stop, I had to go. The footsteps were pounding now, the yelling louder, bouncing off the walls and whirring together with the static. Going against all my instincts, I looked over my shoulder for the source of the footsteps. I recoiled in horror at the sight. It was a human-shaped thing made of static, with human features flashing through every few seconds. A hand, an eye, a length of hair, and running straight at me, arms flailing, feet pounding, voice shrieking incoherently between patches of static, like a radio station going in and out of range. Everything in me was repelled by this absolute monstrosity. Sobbing, I stumbled over Jason's body, slipping and coating myself in his blood. With one last scream, I pulled myself out onto the porch. I turned over and I looked back. The tunnel was gone along with the body, the evidence of my crime. I crumpled to the ground and gasped with relief, the full horror of what I had done yet to wash over me. The vibrating in my hands was painful now, like pins and needles after I had been laying on my arms for hours. I shook and shook them, but it didn't help. And then a shadow to my left, and a growl. I leapt up. Before me stood an angry beast, teeth bared and tackles up, inching toward me. "Barney," I said, my voice trembling. "Hey, it's okay, buddy, it's me, you know me." He lunged and I leapt over the porch railing, falling hard on my side. I groped around for the axe, but of course it was gone, lost to the tunnel. I stumbled to my feet and tried to run from my car. The key was somehow still in my pocket, but it wasn't there. I stood frozen for a second, but the dog was coming and so I sprinted for the trees as the raging dog leapt over the railing and chased after me. I entered the woods, running as fast as I could as branches and thorns tear at my clothes and skin. I could hear the dog's growls just feet behind me. I had no fear which direction I'm running in until I stumble onto the dirt road and nearly fall over. I took a moment to catch my breath, but the dog was at my heels. I bolted into the woods on the other side. My foot caught on a tree root and I crashed into the ground face first. I cried out in agony, scraping my tongue along the now cracked teeth in my mouth. I could hear the dog on the road now coming straight for me, but then a flash of lights and the squeal of brakes. I considered crawling over, calling out, but then I remembered the blood on my clothes. What could I say? And then I hear a whistle, and another and another. The dog stops growling, it whimpers instead. I heard a car door open and slam shut again. And that's when I realize. I ran onto the road just as the car was pulling away. My car. It rolls away into the dark. What the hell? I followed the car, stopping just before I emerged from the trees. I can feel the night's wear on my muscles now that I've slowed. My limbs are so heavy and I'm so tired. I watched myself emerge from the car and it's all that I can do not to pass out. I lean against a tree and let myself sink to the dirt. There's a soft static sound echoing in my head now. My other self ushered the dog inside and closes the door. I sat there gasping for air, lost in my own horror and confusion, for I don't know how long. I think I passed out. I came to myself eventually. The front door was shut and I think Barney is gone from the car. The vibration is spread up my arms and into my shoulders, and I know what it is now. It's the static. It's in me now, in my head, ever since I touched the cube. I remembered my phone. I pulled it out, fumbling it at first because my hands won't stop vibrating. It was no longer spasming, but I still had no signal. At some point though, I must have had one, because I have 8 missed calls, all from Amy. She left a few voicemails of varying lengths, but they wouldn't load. One text got through. "Where are you? Please pick up." I had to get out of here. I had no idea where I'd go or what I would do. No idea how I could live in a world where there are 2 of me, but I had to do something. I had to figure out how to get rid of this static, this infection somehow. I still had my car key in my back pocket. I watched the windows for a minute. No sign of other me. I creeped toward my car, key in hand, keeping low to the ground. As I got closer, I could hear Barney barking and grumbling inside. I unlocked the door and I crawled inside, and then I shut it. Just in time. The cabin door swung open and the other me walked out with the dog. I ducked down so that they wouldn't see me until they were gone again, and then I just sat there. I knew that I needed to go. I wanted to go, but my stupid limbs wouldn't move. I couldn't stop thinking about that sickening thud the axe made when it had connected with his skin and bone. My hands shook. I wanted to throw up, but there was nothing in me to come out. I could hear the static then, patches of it forming on my hands and arms, undulating and slowly spreading. I realized that I, the other one, had disappeared from the window. I must have gone to brush my teeth. Maybe if I can get in there and stop myself from ever going into that closet, then Jason won't be dead. Screw it, I had to try. Slowly and quietly, I pushed the car door open and crawled toward the house. I wince as the front door creaks, but the other me didn't notice. I stood and looked around. And that's when I noticed my empty fast food bag resting on top of the trash. A paper bag. It was me, future me, that had written the note. I snatched it out of there and stared at it helplessly. What was I trying to say? Sorry, I have to go. What? I snatched a pen off the counter and tore off a strip of paper and started scribbling, hoping that I would figure out the note as I go. But my hands and arms shook so bad and I could hardly feel them. And then I got to the word go, and then I heard the bathroom door creak open. I dropped the note and I backed into the living room. Barney had been fast asleep, but he opened his eyes. Slowly he raised his head, his eyes becoming angrier by the second, and his mouth curled up in a snarl, and he was barking. I bolted to the closet just in time, slipping behind the door just as other me emerges from the kitchen. I ducked behind the coats and I felt around in the corner for the black hole, hoping that I could block the other me from going down there, but it wasn't there. It was only a closet. The other me enters and everything changes. The shrieking sound from the tunnels is back, but it's in my head, and it paralyzes me as I feel the yawning gap open up beside me. The other me leans forward to inspect it and stares deep into it, and I can't help it. My breath brushes the back of her neck. She screams and falls and is gone. The gap is still open. I can move again, but I'm vibrating all over. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I need to hurry if I'm going to stop her, and the static is in my gut now. My heart. It's going everywhere, but I need somebody to know where I've gone and why, and maybe you can stop it. Don't come here, just stop it. I've got to go. Sorry, I have to go. That's it. The police said she was probably just writing a story since the events here can't possibly be true. They have no explanation for why the phone was on the floor in the closet, or why the note was still there in the trash, or where Steph had gone. What, she just wandered into the woods in the middle of the night, in a strange place without the dog or any of her stuff. And where's Jason? They looked for traces of my brother's blood on and around the porch, but they found nothing. It was raining by then though, so who knows. The computers and the stuff on the roof are still there, but it doesn't seem to do anything. I touched the cube too before I read Steph's message, and nothing turned on, but I think I felt a jolt in my fingers. I hope that it was just nerves. The Wi-Fi was working fine. Steph's phone worked fine. The parts about her conversations with me are all true. I sent Steph's story to myself before I handed the phone back to the police. I brought Barney home with me. He's not hurt, but he's pretty shaken up. When we arrived, he ran straight to a corner of the living room and has been cowering there ever since. I keep bringing him food and water, but he barely touches it. He won't sleep, and I have to drag him outside for bathroom breaks. He also keeps staring at the door to my garage, alternately whining and growling. I've checked, and I hope that I'm imagining it, but I don't think so. I think I see a shadow in the corner where there's never been one. I tried to approach, but I thought that I could feel tingling in my fingertips. It feels like static. I got out of there and I locked and barricaded the garage door. Please help.